You look at Canada at the moment. What are our problems?
I think people are desperate for hope in Canada right now. I don't think the political class in this country appreciates how much suffering there is in Canada right now. I mean, the political class has had a wonderful 2 years. They have an unbelievable amount of power and a tremendous amount of comfort. All of their homes have gone up by 50% in value, and their stock portfolios up until recently have been inflated. And so they're sort of looking down at the working class and saying, oh, what are you complaining about? You've never had it so good. Well, that's the exact opposite has been true for the working folks. If you don't own a home, you're purchasing, you're like, if you didn't have a home before 2019, likelihood is you'll never own one unless and until there's a major reduction in housing prices. And so you've got this whole generation of people, of young people, who have concluded that they'll never be able to afford a home. So they're 32 years old living in their mom's basement. You can imagine the psychological impact that has on someone's personal security. Like, how do you start a family? So people come to my rallies and they're looking for an explanation about why things are the way they are and looking for some hope about how we might make them better. The situation doesn't make sense to people. The worst of the Trudeau socialist years were coming to bear on the entire national economy. So you had 12% inflation, 12% unemployment.
24% mortgage rates. That's real fun for everyone.
Yes, and highest misery index in Canadian history. That's unemployment plus inflation. And
that was under Justin's father.
Yes.
Surprise, surprise. Yes.
And here we are with the same policies leading to the same results. It was a miserable time for a lot of people.
Now look, lots of young people today either are not exposed to the ideas that you just put forward, or they don't find them persuasive, say in contrast to what appears on the surface to be the more compassionate left-wing view that's characterized frequently and sometimes realistically, by concern for the working class. Like, I worked for the NDP when I was a kid, and at that time in Alberta, Grant Notley ran the NDP, and he was an old union guy in some fundamental sense, and so were most of the people he associated with, and they did have a real concern for the working class. At least some of them did, and I would say that was particularly true of the leadership, not so much the activists. But, you were pretty young when you came across Friedman. I didn't have that experience when I was, say, the same age as you. Why did you find that persuasive in contrast to the left-wing ideas, the ideas of socialism, this rooted in this hypothetical compassion that seems so attractive to kids today?
Because I didn't see the compassion playing itself out in any real way. It's a catchphrase, but what we're actually debating is not who's more compassionate. There's no evidence that people on the socialist left are especially generous with their own money. Sure, they like to spend other people's money, but what you see is really with socialism is Animal Farm. The pigs didn't say they wanted to take the house so that they could be more comfortable and spoiled. They said they were doing it to make everyone equal and to remove the oppression. But then when they actually took the house, they became the new masters and served themselves. And that's what actually happens in socialism. It doesn't eliminate hierarchy.
So why did you buy that argument? Was it as a consequence of encountering Orwell as well, or?
I think it's because I witnessed it again and again. As I studied what actually happens in socialist models, it became very clear that the rhetoric about economic equality never actually came to pass. It was used as a tool to mobilize the masses, but ultimately the outcome was to concentrate power more in the hands of the political elite. Look, government is really legalized force. So if you believe in big government, you believe in expanding force. Relationships of force always favor the powerful. And in reality, those who have more political power then benefit from a bigger government. And those people are all rich, right? They are disproportionately powerful in the system. And so when this big beast called government gets bigger and more powerful, those who have the ability to steer that beast are the ones who are going to profit from it.
So what do you think of the success of countries like the Scandinavian countries? Let's say, well, and the relative success of Canada, because there's been a fair, solid socialist influence, more the English socialist type than the communist-derived type, fair socialist influence in Canada, and it's formed some of our fundamental institutions, our healthcare system, our pension system, a fair bit of labor legislation. I mean, when you look at, and then of course the Scandinavian countries, small though they are and homogenous though they are, they're quite radically successful in function. So what do you make of that, and how do you balance that against your emphasis on, well, a more conservative philosophy and your support of the freest markets possible in some sense?
All right, so let's start with the Scandinavians. I mean, there's some really uncomfortable facts about the Scandinavian countries that the left would not like to talk about. Like Norway, 25% of Norway's economy is oil. So that's really tough to grapple with if you're a modern socialist. Moving to the other countries, Sweden welcomes all kinds of free enterprise and choice, including in the provision of public services. And they have, in fact, in the 90s, the Swedes moved quite dramatically to reduce the cost of government and open up markets and free enterprise. So it's not as simple as to say that these countries are socialistic and therefore successful. And I think it was even one of the Danish leaders came to the United States, and he was speaking at Harvard, and he was saying, all the socialist kids were expecting him to pump his fist in the air and champion socialism. He said, no, actually, we're not a socialist country. And so, there's no question they definitely do have a strong social safety net. I don't object to that. But I wouldn't say that they are state-commanded economies like we're seeing Trudeau attempt to adopt here in Canada.
Right. So you see this as variation within the free market world, right? There's variation, like there is between the Democrats and the Republicans in the U.S., but fundamentally it's a free market.
Everything is a question of degree. But there's a lot of academic literature that shows that that countries with smaller governments as a share of GDP tend to have less poverty and better social and economic growth outcomes. And that is true in both the developing world and the developed world. So I do believe that you can provide a solid social safety net at the same time as having a powerful free market economy that generates the wealth to fund that safety net. Politics is a combat sport, but there has to be some joy in it as well. And you have to make people feel good. The Rabbi Hillel said, people won't always remember what you do or what you say, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And so I think it's important to make people feel good when you're giving a political speech. Make them, there's a tendency to get up and spill doom and gloom all over the room. But I think it's important to make people feel good about the moment and also good about the future.